Hello, my name is Edwin Sechrist. I'm with Team 4, and I'm here to present a game called BlueSprint. BlueSprint is an endless runner set inside a world made of blueprints where a player's response time is put to the test. Last as long as possible by avoiding obstacles and jumping from platform to platform. As a player collects coins, the character speeds up, and the difficulty increases. Enemies show up periodically and will be shot in order to pass by them. BlueSprint will release on both Android and iOS platforms as a single player game. In 2019, the mobile landscape increased to over 200 million players. Just in the United States, mobile gaming also dominates video game revenue with over 50% of all expenditures being on a mobile platform. One of the most active demographics in this space are 18 to 35-year-old males, who also happen to have at least a high school diploma. These are working class citizens, many of them married. They look towards their phones for a quick escape, and Blueprint delivers that quick rounds of Twitch based gameplay. A mechanic we would like to implement in the game, called a timer, will begin right when the game starts. As the game progresses, the timer will increase and it will be displayed for how long the player survives. When the player is no longer playing and the game finishes, then the timer will stop and the player will be shown their total time. We would like to add a mechanic called collecting rings. And in this example, the player jumps to collect 3 rings in the air, and as the player collects each ring, the ring disappears, emits a particle effect, and plays a rewarding sound effect. The ring is then added to the rings counter in the UI. Collecting rings will also make the player run faster, making the game progressively harder as the score increases. Our next mechanic is called a lever. Sometimes the player will encounter a button placed on the floor, and when it's pressed, it will lower a platform as like a bridge so the player can progress. If the player does not hit the button, the player will fall and lose the match. With the introduction of the memorize mechanic, every so often there will be a picture-in-picture glimpse in the upcoming layout. Once the glimpse is gone, the game will turn dark and it'll make it hard for the player to rely on their visuals, and instead they will have to rely on their memory in order to proceed throughout the level. With the destroy and erase mechanic, an enemy will show up on the screen and they will attempt to end the player's run by shooting them. If the enemy's projectiles hit, the run will end just as if the player fell off the stage. However, the player also has the ability to shoot projectiles, and if the enemy is hit, they will be destroyed and the player can continue the run. With the lose mechanic, when a player falls off or takes damage, the score and difficulty are reset. When the player decides to exit, the score is actually kept. That makes it so that if the player thinks the run is getting too difficult and they cannot continue, they back out but keep their score. But if the player thinks they can go ahead and lose, then they lose everything. That makes it so that the player needs to know when to stop in order to receive their score. Our major competitors are Jetpack Joyride, Robot Unicorn Attack, and Punch Quest, other Forever Runner games that are on the mobile platform. BlueSprint is unique among these because it's a side scroller approach, which is different in the first place, with a blueprint aesthetic, and there is enemy and player firing. The higher the score, the faster the game gets, and the harder the enemies. We were tasked with changing our consume mechanic to the memorize and recall mechanic, and changing our win lose mechanic into a win lose mechanic that no longer makes it so that the player loses. For the win lose mechanic, we decided to make it where when the player misses a platform, the score and difficulty reflects the error. For the memorize mechanic, we want to incorporate the new element in a way that would increase the intensity of the game as well as enhance the Twitch based gameplay. After crossing out approaches that include having the player remember past details that were given to them during gameplay, we decided to take inspiration from the game Simon. After implementing said mechanic and reviewing the changes to the overall game, this change has increased the intensity of the game in general as well as the flow. It adds a sense of stress to the player when approaching layout scene occurs. Here is a mock-up of how the game runs. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Have a nice day.